I feel like there's some stuff I should get off my chest. Take your alligator beige.
Everything bothers him.
He's unbothered.
He calls it unbothered, but that's what's cute because everything bothers him. He's bothered. I'm a botherina.
What's up, everybody, and welcome to yet another episode of Unbothered by Thai Rivera. That's right, it's Unbothered by Thai Rivera. I'm your host, Thai Rivera, the absolute best LGBTQ comedian in the world. My co-host, Snoopy Bijou, is currently enjoying a Whimzees Alligator. That's right, she's actually enjoying her Whimzees Alligator. Apparently today, she's in a Whimzees kind of mood. Some days she's not. We've discussed this before. Anyway, Whimzees Alligators, the never-to-be sponsor of Unbothered by Thai Rivera, but we still give them a shout-out, and we still put our Amazon affiliates link for Whimzees Alligators down below in the description box. If you want a treat that will not kill your dog, I don't think I can make that claim legally. It hasn't killed my dog. So if you guys want a treat that in 10 years hasn't killed my dog, check the description box. Get some Whimzees Alligators. I'll get a little bit of cheat day money. Anyway, let's talk about what's been going on in the Las Vegas comedy scene. Lately, I really don't want to be a part of the Las Vegas comedy scene, and I really just am going to put that out there just like that. I'm ashamed of this comedy scene. I am honestly embarrassed to say that I'm a part of this comedy scene. I think a lot of what's happening here is ass backwards, and I was at Skankfest a week and a half ago, 2 weeks ago now, was Skankfest 2 weeks ago. And it was great. Like, it's the opposite of what people would think. People hear the word skank and they right away think like low quality people. And the way Louis J. Gomez, one of the Legion of Skanks, because, you know, it was started by a podcast called Legion of Skanks, and they decided to have this festival. And this is like, I don't know if it's like the third or fourth one or what number it is. All I know is I found out about it not too long before I actually got booked on it. I was one of the paid performers. I wasn't just there hanging out like some people were. Nothing against some of the people that were there just hanging out. And understand when I say I'm embarrassed about a lot of what's happening on the Las Vegas comedy scene, that doesn't mean I don't think there aren't any good comics here. It doesn't mean that I think that there's no potential on this scene. It's just a lot of what happens on this scene to me doesn't really make sense. And a lot of the stuff that I've called out and gotten zero to little support on, to me, doesn't make sense either. It's like people here want to be popular with people that don't really matter in the industry in general, people that aren't really going to do anything for you. It's just kind of trying to be locally popular. And that's something, even when I was in LA, that I just wasn't ever trying to be locally popular, because I don't think you should have to do that when you're a talented person. And I don't think you have to do that when you're a talented person. Like me, I go up and I let my talent speak for me for the most part. Like, yeah, I do Unbothered and I do some other stuff online. I've been concentrating more on content creation. And some weeks, well, last week I wasn't the best about that because I really did have this on my mind, what I was thinking about the Las Vegas comedy scene and where I'm at with it. Because what I was going to tell you guys was Skankfest was started by Legion of Skanks. Louis J. Gomez, who's one of the Legion of Skanks guys, he talks about the Skanks, you know, their fans, like they're, you know, the lowest of the low, and that's the way he jokes with them, and that's like their running thing. But then you go to Skankfest, everybody's very respectful. It is a lot of comedy nerds, which I use the word nerds in the best way possible in this instance, because it is a lot of people that just really care about comedy and podcasts, and they're not worried about political correctness. If you're a cool person, if you're a good person, they're going to read that, and they just enjoy your comedy. They just enjoy sometimes your edgier perspective too. So it was a lot of freedom, and it was a really good situation. I did 2 shows. Both of them were in the tank. I had a really good time. It was exactly what I needed because I got to see a bunch of friends that I don't always get to see. You know, I got to see Godfrey, who I haven't seen since I worked with him. Well, I saw him once since I worked with him in Tempe. I featured for him at the Tempe Improv years ago, and we had a really good time catching up. I saw Tim Dillon, obviously. I saw Eric Griffin. I saw Jeremiah Watkins, Jessica Michelle Singleton, just a bunch. I got to actually chat with Corinne Fisher, from the Guys We Fucked podcast, and I had met her back in like outside of Portland. We were performing somewhere in Oregon, and I didn't know anything about her podcast or anything. She was just a cool girl that did a guest set and super fun. And we didn't get to talk very much because she was headed somewhere. And so she did her guest set, and then she had to leave before the show was over, and I was headlining the show. And so we didn't really get to chat. We got to chat backstage at Skankfest, and it was a really good situation. One thing, though, that did get on my nerves, and I'll probably put this in the title, is Matt Chavez, the owner of the LA Comedy Club, or one of the owners of the LA Comedy Club, tried to approach me. And that didn't go the way I'm sure he thought it was going to go. You know, he walks up to me and he's like, "Hey, Ty." And he puts his hand out to shake my hand. And I just looked at his hand and I was like, "What's up, Matt?" And I didn't, like, I'm not... The thing you guys have to understand about me is if I don't like somebody or I don't respect them, I'm not going to shake their hand. I'm not going to fist bump them. I'm not going to do any of that. And I've had people want to fight me over that before. I don't care. Feel how you want. Try to impose any consequences on me you want to impose on me. I don't care. If I don't like you, if I don't respect you, I'm not making physical contact with you. You're lucky I'm even talking to you, because what Matt maybe doesn't realize is the night before at the kickoff party, because there was a kickoff party that was held at Backstage Bar and Billiards, I was hanging out with Freddie Correa. Freddie Correa is friends with Matt Chavez, the owner of LA Comedy Club. He's good friends with him. They hang out, him and his wife, Lizzie. I'm friends with Freddie and his wife, Lizzie. And so I'm good at keeping that shit separate, though. Like, if you tell me you're hanging out with Matt and you know I don't like Matt, I'm not always going to throw in a, well, you know I hate him. I don't care. And I don't hate Matt, but I definitely do not like him, do not respect him. And that's something that he knows person to person. This is something that I've talked to Matt about, because there were a couple situations where I was supposedly friends with LA Comedy Club, friends with Matt, friends with Joaquin. I don't really care for Joaquin either, because I don't like the way that they've handled certain situations that have been specifically to do with me, and where it's not like secondhand. It's like there was only 3 people, sometimes 2 people in the conversation. It would be me and Joaquin, me and Matt, or sometimes me, Joaquin, and Matt. So between the 3 of us, we all know what's happened between the 3 of us. We all know between the 2 of us in the different instances, respectively, what's happened between us. So when I say I don't want to play like I'm friends with you, you know why I don't want to play like I'm friends with you. I haven't been to your club in a long time because I know that I shouldn't show up there and be disrespectful with people that own the club, knowing that they own the club. So that's me being the kind of person that I think that you're supposed to be. Like, if your thing is you don't like these people, you don't want to play nice with them, you don't want to be friends with them, then why would I go to their club and be disrespectful? So what I was saying was, at the kickoff party, there was a point where me, Freddie, and Lizzie were all hanging out. And then Freddie had to go do something. Freddie and Lizzie had to go do something, or maybe I had to do something. I don't remember. But it was like, let's meet up and have a cigarette in this particular spot. And so Freddie and Lizzie take off. I go off in my direction. I'm supposed to come back and have a cigarette with them. And then when I come back to have my cigarette with Freddie, he is sitting with Matt and somebody else, you know. But he's sitting with Matt Chavez. And like I said, I don't like Matt. So I peek around the corner. I see that Freddie's sitting with Matt, and just me being the way I am, I'm like, okay, this isn't an area I want to be around. And so I just discreetly turned myself around, went back and talked to other people. At that point, I talked to Sean Patton, who I've been friends with forever too. Another person that I was glad I got to see, but I haven't seen him in like 10 years or something like that. But it was super great to see Sean Patton. And so we were talking for a while. And so it wasn't like it bothered me at all to do that. And it wasn't like I got like a bad feeling in my stomach or something. It was just one of those situations where I walked around the corner and I was like, yeah, I don't like Matt. And so I just went in and turned myself right back around, had a good time. There were so many people that I saw at Skankfest that I really wasn't sweating it. So when we get to night 2 and Matt sees me and he knows the way that he's been with me, because In our situation, it really hasn't been a situation of me disrespecting Matt Chavez or the LA Comedy Club. It hasn't been a situation like that at all. It's been a situation of me trying to show them respect, of me trying to do things the way that I'm supposed to, and them continuously taking the wrong side and everything because they've been friends with certain people longer. And that's not something I agree with. I don't think that because you're friends with somebody that you should just take their side. Actually, I feel the opposite. I feel like if you're really friends with somebody, you should let them know when it is they're messing up. You should every once in a while be like, hey, this may not be the best idea, which will lead to them making better decisions if they're the kind of friends that are actually open to listening. Like, there was a situation where I mentioned Michael Robertson. Michael Robertson used to work at the LA Comedy Club. Well, Michael Robertson kept messing up and kept mistreating people, which I personally have said before that I liked Michael Robertson. I don't dislike Michael Robertson now. When I see Michael Robertson at this point, which is very rare, I say hi to him, I wave to him, but back in the day, he was messing up a lot. He just was. There were different shady things he had done while he was working for LA Comedy Club. There were points, because I do try to handle everything discreetly. I know a lot of people think I just jump on my podcast and start talking about things. No, understand, by the time I brought something to my podcast, I have brought it to the attention of the people that are involved in a very discreet manner, usually several times before I actually get it to the podcast. So with the situation with Mike Robertson, there was a day where I was going back and forth with Mike Robertson because he had pulled some shady shit with my friend John Carden, who I'm going to do an episode with or put an episode out with that I already recorded. I just need to edit it. But he had pulled some shady stuff with John Carden. I went ahead and hit Mike Robertson up person to person and just let him know, hey, I know this happened, correct the behavior type of thing. And I'm not the kind of person that's trying to act scary or like I'm threatening people. I come to you as a friend and just say, hey, this is the way you're messing up right now. That's something I did with Mike Robertson. Well, Matt Chavez, I eventually had to hit Matt Chavez up and be like, hey, did this happen this particular way? Because this is the way that Mike is making it sound like it's happening. Matt told me himself that did not happen that way, but he did not bother to go to Mike Robertson and make the correction with Mike Robertson. Instead, because Matt Chavez isn't good with confrontation, and this is just something that's a known fact about Matt Chavez, which if you're going to be a business owner and you're going to pretend like you're one of the leaders in a comedy scene, which that's what Matt Chavez will sometimes paint himself as one of the leaders, as one of the authorities on the Las Vegas comedy scene, which is something I never bought into and became very clear to him towards the end of our friendship, was that I don't see him as any kind of authority on stand-up comedy. I've said this before. To me, Matt Chavez has zero instincts when it comes to stand-up comedy. So that's another thing that'll happen with me and people. If I don't respect your opinion on comedy, then it's going to end up being hard for us to be friends if you continuously present yourself as some kind of authority on stand-up comedy. Like one time, there was a night where there was a comic that was showcasing for LA Comedy Club for the first time. I've known this comic for a long time. And I walked in. This comic has an East Coast accent. And I walk in and Matt Chavez, and this comic is very funny. Like, let me say that. I really respect this comic. I've known him for years and years. Very funny, consistently funny, edgy, funny, great. And just because he has this East Coast accent, Matt Chavez looks at me. We're sitting at the high top that we used to always sit at in the old LA Comedy Club room. And Matt looks at me and he's like, who's this guy think he is? Dice? And I was just like, because my friend doesn't sound anything like Dice. I mean, they both have an East Coast accent. There's that. But that's where it ends. It's not like he's doing Dice. When I'll date myself and tell you guys that I've been a Dice fan my entire life. When I was a kid, that's when Dice was real, because I'm an 80s kid. And so when I was a kid, Dice was the biggest thing in the world, and I loved Hickory Dickory Duck. Oh, I just love Dice, which may not be the best dice either. But I love dice, and I know dice's stuff. So if my friend were doing dice, I would definitely be like, yeah, clearly this guy is a dice ripoff. But that wasn't what it was. So I just like rolled my eyes because I thought that was the nicest thing to do. Because I'm not going to agree with you. I mean, like, me and Matt aren't peers. There's no peer pressure there. Matt is a club owner. I'm a talented comic. Like, for me, I always hold talented comic above club owner, and I know some people would see that a different way. I don't. Like, I think the talent is the steam in the engine. You know, that's what makes everything run, is the talent. Not, you know, yeah, we need a place to perform, but most talent bookers and most club owners don't really know that much about stand-up comedy. I've met a lot of them. I've talked to a lot of them. I've heard a lot of their thoughts. I've humored a fair amount of them, because if we're just in passing, I'll give you the whatever. But if we actually know each other and you're sitting across from me and you say somebody's doing dice and they're not doing dice, I'm going to roll my eyes, which is what I did. So then Matt's fiance, Carissa, comes in, who I love Carissa. I've always been cool with Carissa. Not a single bad word to say about Carissa. But Carissa comes in like she often would at the end of the night. And she comes in, and Matt, like, immediately, you know, they greet each other. And then Matt was like, I was just talking to Ty, and he looked at me like I was stupid, so I'll never talk to him about stand-up again. And he said it like he was calling me out, or like I was going to have some kind of shame about it. And so Carissa looked at me, just like, you know, looked at me to verify what he was saying. And I just was like, yeah, I did, you know, and I don't care. I don't feel any way about that. So anyway, my thing is, when we get to this point where, you know, you have Matt continuously fucking up and not actually being what he presents himself as, which is one of the leaders of the Las Vegas comedy scene, consistently not living up. There was a situation where eventually Mike Robertson, who I mentioned, ended up slapping somebody at the Stratosphere at Strat, and then Strat had to get rid of Mike Robertson, which had to be independent of LA Comedy Club, or they had to make LA Comedy Club do it, because LA Comedy Club would never do it on their own, because they don't believe in correcting their own people. So I just feel like if I've seen you continuously display this behavior and I don't respect it, then why am I going to shake your hand? When I shake your hand at Skankfest, where I know a lot of the biggest and best comics, because even though sometimes people try to talk shit about me, I don't see a lot of the people that talk shit about me on Kill Tony. And I wasn't there as doing a minute. I was one of they don't call them judges on there. They're called guests on Kill Tony, which I heard some people were saying that I didn't talk enough on Kill Tony. Well, I'm not there to take over, and it's Tony's show, so taking over wouldn't be an option anyway. I'm there to just add to what's already going on. And it was my first time doing it. I had legitimately locked myself out of Tim Dillon's guest house, and Bijou was locked in. Thankfully, everything was okay. She had gone potty, but I still was stressed out. I hadn't got to do my hair. I didn't have an extra key for Tim's guest house, and I was thinking about that but I had a great time still. But also, I was feeling it out, and I was figuring out what my place was in this particular situation. And so when I heard that certain people were saying things about me on Kill Tony, I was just like, great, what episode were they on? Oh, they weren't? Well, the people that talk about me on Kill Tony will never be asked to do Kill Tony. So how much can I really care about their opinions? Which Tony Hinchcliffe was there too. Hans Kim was there. Like, everybody was at Skankfest. And so it's like, when we're at an event like Skankfest and nobody cares about the name Matt Chavez, nobody cares about the LA Comedy Club. These are all comics. Like, for the most part, Skankfest was full of comics that were either too big to do LA Comedy Club, or Matt probably would think that they're too edgy anyway, because again, Matt has this idea that certain people are too edgy to do his club, not realizing, even though he's been in Las Vegas forever, that Las Vegas loves edgy. For some reason, Matt thinks this is halfway Disneyland. Like, he used to always talk about how I was one of the few comics that he would let be as edgy as they wanted to, because it always went over really well. And I always felt like, yeah, there's a lot of us. It's just you pick people that aren't the best. I ended up getting in, I think, because I had worked with Joe Coy for so long, because I worked with Joe Coy for a year and a half, and I think that Matt or Joaquin had seen me at when I did Terry Fader Theater and the Mirage with Joe Coy. And that's when somebody had hit me up and said, hey, Matt wants to book you. Matt booked me as a feature. I killed it as a feature. So then he had me come back and headline. Well, he had me co-headline a couple of times. Then he took me to just headlining. And then it got to where I was, one of the, there's a scale there was of what people got paid, and I was at the top of that scale. And so that's where we were when, my relationship fell apart with LA Comedy Club. For anybody that's like, well, he's bitter because LA Comedy Club. No, I used to work for LA Comedy Club and made the most money that you can make working for LA Comedy Club. So when I speak on LA Comedy Club, it's not coming from a place of bitterness. It's not coming from a place of they wouldn't have me. It's not that kind of situation. And if I wanted to make nice with Matt and Joaquin, I know that that's a possibility. It's just I don't want to be what Matt and Joaquin want me to be. And so my point is, when we get to Skankfest and nobody cares about Matt Chavez and nobody cares about LA Comedy Club, it's just a thing. It's just, yeah, LA Comedy Club is a club. And I know that Lewis and I think Zach were there. Zach Amico were at LA Comedy Club like a couple weeks before doing like a special event type of thing. So like they have some knowledge or whatever, and that's probably why Matt was there. But it's not like anybody in those circles is worried about Matt Chavez. So of course, with me knowing everybody there, you want to be seen shaking my hand. Well, that doesn't mean I want to be seen shaking your hand, because no matter what you think of me, I still think you're a low quality person. I still think that you're not the kind of person that I want to be seen associating with, because I know the real you. I know the you that's not trying to shake my hand and being like, what's up, Ty? I know the you that's burying your head in the sand while your friends are doing fuck shit, and literally I get assaulted in your club, and rather than just going through legal channels and suing the shit out of you, which would have been 100% possible, and between the three of us and anybody that knows that full story knows that would be fully possible, instead of going straight to a lawyer, Matt Chavez, instead I text you immediately after, like, correct your friend. My neck is fucked up right now. Correct your friend. And the only reason that didn't turn into a different situation was because I was trying to show your club respect. So, and one day I'll tell the full story of Gooch and exactly the way that went down. So, when that's the way I've tried to handle things person to person, and you can't handle that, and you can't handle dealing with me as a friend, which is what you said we were, which is what you pretended we were, but then we're in a public space where maybe you're not so popular, and then you want to present to the rest of the world like we're friends. Don't be surprised when I don't go for it, because I'm like, we're not friends. I'm not going to pretend to be your friend right now, because you know what? We aren't. So don't walk up to me talking about, what's up, Ty, and put your hand out, and then have the nerve to act slightly victimized because he looked at his hand and he was like, okay, and then he walks away. What are you victimized about, really? Because I'm not going to pretend with you? Because I'm not going to pretend we're friends when I know we're not friends? Okay, well, I guess you can stay mad about that, because that's not my issue. I'm not going to play like we're friends when we're not friends. It's what it is. So, if I were Matt Chavez, I never would have approached me in the first place. Just like when I saw him sitting with Freddie the night before, I chose not to approach them. I ended up catching up with Freddie later in the night, and we hung out plenty. So it wasn't like that changed my night, but it's just, you want to be seen as somebody that gets along with me, and I don't need you for anything. It's like I've said with everybody else. I don't know why it would surprise anybody that I would have that same attitude towards a club owner or a booker, when I've always said, as soon as I realize that somebody's looking at me as just a networking tool, I immediately categorize them the same way. So it's kind of like, okay, I see what value I have for you, but what value do you have for me? And in almost all instances, the answer to that question is you have zero value to me. I'm the talented one. I don't need to be seen with a club owner for credibility. I get on stage, people see what it is I do there. I do my ridiculousness online, people see what it is I do there. And so I don't need to be seen with a club owner in order for me to have status. I get on stage, and that's where my status comes from. So I'm sorry, but I talk to who I want to talk to. I talk to the people I like. And outside of that, I'm not really worried about anything. Like not too long ago, I did David Hewlett's podcast, Paprika podcast. And I will talk about this just briefly because you won't see me on that podcast again. Because what happened was I did his podcast for free. And anybody that's dealt with me as far as podcast goes knows that if you don't have over a certain amount of viewers, listeners, whatever, I'm not going to do your podcast for free. I will charge you to do your podcast. Because David Hewlett has been working for OCHA, doing piano keys at OCHA, I decided to do his podcast for free. Well, everybody knows that there's somebody that's made a hate channel on me, and that hate channel has been going on for about 2 years. Well, they took an existing channel and turned it into a pretty Thai Rivera specific hate channel for 2 years, even though I have no relationship with this person. I give this person no shine. I don't mention their name. One time I used their clips not too long ago, and that was the Delilah one. I don't care if you guys know who it is. I just personally am not mentioning this person's name. But I used their clips with the Delilah situation because Delilah was trying to make legal problems, and I was like, let me use this person's own words, Delilah's own words, to hang her. And that was the only reason. And I will use anybody as a tool. I mean, like, if you put something out there that will help me prove my point and make it so I deal with less headaches about things that shouldn't be an issue for me in the first place, then guess what? I'm going to use your shit. So that's what happened there was I went ahead and did use those clips just to let Delilah hang herself. And it effectively did just that, because that podcast in particular, even though I put it out for public consumption, was really meant for a very limited audience that needed to see the way that played out and, in her own words, what she was trying to do. And it was effective. I had no hiccups professionally over the Delilah situation, and it was because anytime anybody had any kind of question about that, like, I heard you threaten this woman, watch this. And then there she was in her own words, letting everybody know that she was just trying to make problems. So she hung herself as far as that went. And that's what happens with a lot of these people. But anyway, I don't mention this person. And then the first thing that David Hewlett does on his podcast is he asks me about that person, which I'm not here for free to talk about that anyway. I'm not here to talk about shit I don't want to talk about. That's not why I'm doing your podcast. I was doing your podcast because you said I would be doing you a favor, and you had wanted to wait to have me on until you were a couple interviews in and you felt like you had caught a stride. Well, I came and you still hadn't caught a stride. Because if you watch that podcast, even when it came to that question, I told him I didn't want to talk about that person, but I would talk about the more general issue. And I started to talk about the more general issue, and then you'll notice he cuts me off at a point. And I'm like, well, why are you cutting me off right now? Like, you brought up something that I didn't want to talk about. I turned it into something that I felt could be productive, and then you cut me off because you think something would be more interesting. Well, I'm not really here for what you would think would be more interesting. I really don't get a sense from David Hewlett that the kinds of things he thinks are interesting are going to be the kind of things that I think are interesting. That's why when I'm around David Hewlett and he did piano at OCHA, I kept things very surface. I kept things very just to the music and to the things that we really had in common. Like with me and David Hewlett, we just don't have a lot in common when it comes to a lot of things. And so it's like, I'll be cool with him and I'll talk to him about certain things. And don't get me wrong, I don't dislike David Hewlett. But if you listen to the Paprika podcast that I did, he interrupts me every time he brings up anything that's of interest to me. He'll bring up something that seems like it could be an interesting topic, and then I'll go to talk about it, and then he'll get distracted and talk about something else. And I felt like this is 2 hours of me wasting time. This is why I charge people to do small podcasts, because I know that I'm usually not going to enjoy the experience, and nobody's going to hear it anyway. So it's not like I'm going to get a lot out of it. And then I mentioned Lex Las Vegas on that podcast and talked about him just for a second. And it was only because I knew he would lose his shit, and then he would promote the shit out of the podcast that I was on, and then I didn't have to do anything to promote it. And I also didn't seem like an asshole for not promoting it, because things I said had made it so that it would get promoted. It's still on Facebook, only got like 126 views, which is the main platform for the Paprika podcast. So even with all of Lex's promoting, it still only got 126 views. So it lets you know, out of his 20,000 followers on Instagram, how many people are actually dialed into his thing, because I'd be willing to bet at least half of those clicks came from just me being on the podcast. So there's 60 right there. So he has maybe a reach of 60. Then you also have to remember that there's also the people that'll just like watch for a minute, because I think if you watch for 1 minute on a YouTube video, then that counts as a view. So there's some people that would just be scrolling randomly, see it pop up in their feed, watch for a minute. So maybe he has a followership of like 30. I don't know. But, you do the math on that. But that guy too, like Lex Las Vegas, really, and when I say he promoted it, he really did promote it. Like, he tagged me a million times on a million different things. Friends were hitting me up, telling me, I don't know why Lex. It's like he claims to be a promoter, but he knows the least about actual promotion. Like, his methods, 1, weren't effective, and 2, were annoying, which you don't want to annoy people with your promoting. You don't want people to feel like they're spamming you. And that's what Lex was doing, was he was spamming people, and there were people hitting me up telling me, I'm literally getting tagged by Lex right now on things that I'm not at all a part of, and I'm not in the clip, so I don't know why he's tagging me. And I don't know where he got the idea that this was good for promotion, especially something like a podcast where somebody's talking about something that's so specific to you. Because he was mad because he was trying to pin on me that I had said that it takes 10 years to actually find your voice in comedy. I think that's the way David Hewlett phrased it. And I didn't answer that question in a direct, like, yeah, it takes 10 years, because I personally think that once you're funny, you're funny. And that's just the way it works. Lex is not funny. And that's why I guess maybe he's a little hurt by it. But I personally, at that point in the conversation, wasn't talking about Lex, and I wasn't thinking about any, like, David Hewlett asked that question. I had nothing to do with him asking that question. I don't think it necessarily takes 10 years to be funny. I've seen people be funny after a year. I've seen people be funny the first time they went on stage. And yeah, it does take time for you to actually develop your set. But I personally did Live at Gotham when I think I was 6 years into stand-up. So obviously, I was already on Comedy Central 6 years in. I must have been funny. And I knew what I was doing at that time, and I was fucking killing it everywhere I was going. So, like, and that had been since I had started. So I am not a person that believes it takes 10 years for you to be a comic or 10 years for you to be funny, especially with the way the internet works now. You're ready to go when you're ready to go. You can headline when you can do 45 minutes and you can fill up a show. Technically, you can headline when you're doing 30 minutes and you can fill up a show. If you can actually get people to show up, the clubs are going to headline you. If you can get people to pay for tickets and you can pack out a room, or even honestly paid 3/4 pack out a room, you're going to work. So I don't know why he was trying so hard to pin that on me, but he accuses me of gatekeeping, which I don't really know what gate exactly I'm keeping, because I'm not in charge of anything. I'm not stopping anybody from doing anything, except for when it comes to Battle Roast. I've been very clear about the fact that I just will not deal with certain people when it comes to Battle Roast. Gabe Choir was on Battle Roast the other night, which Battle Roast is TC's show. And, with Gabe Choir being on Battle Roast, Gabe Choir talked enough shit about me that I really did think it was a mark of what a low quality person he is, that he would want to be on something where I'm judging. Because if you guys don't know, Gabe Choir is the one that came to my birthday and at OCHA and tried to talk shit there. And then he's been really chummy with Ian Rainier. And so it's like Ian has said that nobody should be involved with anything. Nobody that's connected to him should be involved with anything I'm on. Well, what happened, Gabe? Did Ian give you a night off being his bitch boy to actually come out and do a show that I'm judging? And when it comes to Gabe specifically, if I felt the way that you claim to feel about me, I wouldn't want to be on anything where I was a judge. So what made you decide to swallow your pride and come do your boring shit on Battle Roast, which is something I'll end up addressing with TC, because I didn't even know you were going to be on. Like, I had no idea, and I had asked for all of the different battles to be sent to me before I did it, which I'll also talk about that really quick. Like my situation with TC. I love TC. I really do love TC. But I guess I should wrap up the thing with David Hewlett. So anyway, so now David Hewlett and Paprika Podcast have decided that they're going to go into war with the guy that made the hate channel about me because he said something about them, which again to me is a bunch of wasted effort, and they can do what they want, but I personally would not give that person any kind of spotlight at all. And B, I don't know why David Hewlett is trying to start an online beef with somebody when he doesn't have a product for anybody to see. Like, if you're going to call attention to yourself, if you're going to call attention to drama, then at least have a product for people to see. David Hewlett isn't killing it when he goes up. I've seen David Hewlett go up a lot. I do think David Hewlett has some potential, but he's not able to do like a good set consistently. It's hit and miss at best, and it's more miss than hit. So I guess do what you want, but I don't understand the point of calling attention to something that there's no product to sell there. So it's like creating drama just to create drama, which again, to me, is another reason that I'm embarrassed of the Las Vegas comedy scene. So then there's Battle Roast, which is TC Morgan's show, which I do love TC, but at the same time, he's not using me to my full ability. Like when it comes to TC, the way that he could use me where it would really benefit him was if he would let me know exactly who's going to be performing, like all of the performers, like I had asked, which I don't know another way to ask than just in regular English. Because I've asked him a couple of times where I've been like, hey, send me all of the names so I know who's going to be on, so I can write at least, because, you know, there's always going to be a fair amount of in the moment that I'm going to do. But at least if I have a couple like quick jokes or quick things to say about people, because most of the people that do Battle Roast, I do actually like. They're some of the newer comics, and that's one thing that I do want to mention. Is there are plenty of newer comics on the Vegas comedy scene that I think show a lot of promise, and those are the people that I consider friends. Those are the people that I really like. Then there's, you know, the professional end, which would be Carlos Anthony. I get along really well with Carlos Anthony. Love Carlos Anthony. Anytime I can hook him up with anything, I will hook him up with it. That's something he knows. Penny Prince is somebody I really respect. Landry, who you never see out on the scene because he's always out on the ships, is another person I respect. Spencer James is another person I respect. There are comics that I actually respect on the Vegas comedy scene. Just for the most part, they're not out as much because they're either on ships or on the road. And so it's not like there's not that too. But when it comes to the newer comics, a lot of the open micers, them I really like a lot. Like there's a lot of them that to me show a lot of promise, and if they stick with it and if they actually work on what they need to work on, they're going to be great. So it's not like I think this scene is completely hopeless, but at the same time, there's plenty here to embarrass me. And when it comes to TC, it really is a situation where I've asked him a couple of times to send me the names of everybody that's going to be battling so that I can prepare the way that I should prepare, so that no matter how the battle goes, because right now we're dealing with a lot of people that are new to roasting, which I'm not going to say anything bad about. A lot of the roast battles have been good, have been decent, but every once in a while, the reason I'm there is just so that I can inject something fun if one of the battles tanks, which we've had that happen more than once where the battles tank. And I've been able to go ahead and add in my little pops here and there. But if I can give you something great rather than something just okay, guess what I want to give you? I want to give you great, because this is my reputation at the same time. So even though I agree to do your show, I'm not agreeing to look anything less than professional on your show. I'm not trying to do your show just 100% your way, in the way that it's just kind of thrown together. And like, that's not the way I want to do anything. That's the reason I turn a lot of shit down, is because I don't want to look unprofessional, because everything around me is unprofessional. And so if we're going to be taking the risk and having these guys that are newer to roasting, actually roasting, I'm fine with that. But how about we give ourselves every chance to have as good of a situation as we can possibly have? And all I said about Gabe Choir on his roast battle was just, it was him versus Sean Rotan, which I like Sean Rotan as a person, but this is his second time roasting, or maybe third time roasting, and he's not really roasting. He's more just doing a set, and the other person's roasting. So I'm not a fan of that. That's not what I'm there for. That's not what I'm gonna be there for. And I guess this is me saying at the same time for TC, and in a very public way, which maybe you could say I should say this on the phone or on text, but I've been clear about the fact that I want to know who's actually on the roast. And that also would lead to me having somewhat of a say in who's on the roast. So I guess what I'm saying is, if this shit doesn't change, you're not going to see me on another one. And I don't care. Bring somebody else in, have somebody else do what it is I do there. You guys handle that, because I don't want to be a part of anything unprofessional. And had I been told that Gabe Choir was going to be on the roast, I would have been like, he has a lot of nerve wanting to do something I'm on after as much shit as him and Ian have talked about me. But okay. But since it just got sprung on me last minute, I knew that the only things I was going to be able to say were the meanest things. And I knew that that wasn't going to help out the show. So that's where I'll control myself and be like, okay, I'm just going to go ahead and let it be known that I thought that that was boring, and I'm going to move on. Because I don't know how these guys claim to respect themselves and talk so much shit about me, but then they're clamoring to be on something I'm judging. So let that be known. And I don't like... There is no consequence to me for anything I'm saying or anything I'm doing right now, because I don't care about any of these situations in a way where I would regret anything that would come of this. If I'm put in a situation with Battle Roast where it's like I'm going to come off looking unprofessional if certain things don't happen a certain way, or I could keep my mouth shut. Well, guess what? I'd rather keep my reputation, because at the end of the day, my reputation is what I leave with. So no matter what happens with your show, my reputation is all I'm in charge of. And yeah, lately I've had shit that I've had to do. So I'll show up to Battle Roast around 7:30. It starts at 7:30. And I know that there are certain things we have to do. But if you notice, once I come in, I'm ready. As soon as I get there, I'm ready, which is something I'm known for. I'm known for being able to just throw down my jacket, throw down my bag, and get on stage. It's not a lot for me. I don't need to get in my space. I don't need to think about shit. Just let's do it. Let's get on stage. So when I'm being put in a situation where it's like, I don't know who the comics are, we can't guarantee that the comics are going to do well. So I say, in order to safeguard against this, let's go ahead and make this as close to foolproof as possible by making sure that I have some pops I can definitely add in there. Then that's what I need from you. I don't need this happened and this came. I don't need to know what the behind the scenes is on why you didn't send me all of the names. I don't need any of that. I just need the names. And if it doesn't happen next time, TC can hit me up, because honestly, like I said, if it doesn't happen this time, or if it's not possible, I just don't need to be there. And I'm fine with that 100%, because I don't want to look bad. over anybody else's project. I don't like anybody that much. Then there's Angie Crum, who I love Angie Crum, and I've talked about Angie before. But you know what was weird to me, and another thing that's kind of telling of the way that the Vegas comedy scene works and why I don't necessarily like being here anymore is it's the final night of Skankfest. It was Sunday night, and it had been a great day. You know, it really had been a great day. Sunday, I didn't have any shows. My shows were Friday and Saturday. Sunday, I had no shows, and I was really happy with that because I got to watch both of the Kill Tonys. One of them I watched all the way through. The second one, I didn't watch all of it because, you know, I just wanted to see Hans Kim on that second one. But I was having a really great night. It had been a really great weekend. I am kind of tired though because, you know, I had been standing a lot of the time. Like that's the way it's set up is there's a lot of standing and you can go to the green room and chill out or one of the green rooms and chill out. But there is a lot of standing going on. And so it's the final night. I'm tired. I'm ready to relax, which Gavin Monaco and Rob Falco were there a lot of the time. They had volunteered, and so they were able to get into the fest free. And I was talking to them quite a bit over the weekend. Also, Evan Conley was another one I was talking to over the weekend. And I really like those three guys. And I joke all the time about wanting to fuck Gavin Monaco, which I sent him a message letting him know that I'm just joking about that. And if it makes him uncomfortable, I'll stop. And I let him know that the reason I sent him that message was because when I was first starting out, I was legitimately sexually harassed. And I've talked about that before. But I was legitimately sexually harassed by a person to the point where I had to hide all the time. And I wasn't physically afraid of this person at all. But the reason that I had to put up with it was because I was new. It was way before Me Too was even a thing. I didn't know how things worked, and I knew this person had been on TV quite a bit, and I didn't want to step on toes, and I didn't want people to think that I was a problem. And also, when you're brown and you lose it over those kinds of things, there are a lot of times different consequences than if you're white and you lose it over those kinds of things. And so there were so many things that made it so that there was a power dynamic there that I didn't want to run up against when I was brand new. Like being me now, it would be handled completely differently. I would right away just be open about it. But being me then, when I was new, it presented a problem for me, and it was something I didn't know how to handle, and so I just had to put up with it for as long as it lasted. And so I wanted to make sure that Gavin didn't feel that, like with me joking with him. And my joking always happens on stage. Like the stuff that was happening with me was happening off stage. It was happening on stage. It was like I would literally try to hide from this guy anytime that he was around. And so I've been open about that too. And one day I'll make a full episode about that as well. But you know, it's like something a lot of people aren't ready to hear about because some people do like that guy. And he's been around for years. And like I said, he's been on TV. And you really get to see the way that no matter what, people just won't accept that maybe somebody that they like did something that was less than admirable. And you get to see from my situation on a very small level how things sometimes like the Me Too movement, even if they get carried away at a certain point, are necessary because some people will just continuously bury their head in the sand over these kinds of things, no matter how credible the person is, because nobody's ever accused me of lying. Like when it comes to any of my situations with anybody, nobody's ever accused me of lying. People have said I'm an asshole. People have said I don't say things in the nicest way, but nobody's ever said I was lying. So if you know I'm not lying, but you know I'm being sexually harassed or I was being sexually harassed, then why do you have a problem with me actually saying that? You know, why is that an actual thing for you? But anyway, I just wanted to mention that, you know, like Gavin Monaco, Rob Falco, and Evan Connolly are three of the guys that I really like. And I really think if they continue to apply themselves and get up as much as possible and also at the same time continue to be the guys that they are, I think that they'll be really good in the Las Vegas comedy scene. I think they'll be really good everywhere once they really get some experience under their belt and kind of figure out their voices and what it is they're doing. But, like, you know, there's some of the guys. Also, Casper, who I've talked about a bunch of times. Casper's a guy that I think is really doing all of the right things. And there's other people that are also doing well on the scene, but your names escape me at the moment. But you know who you are, and it's not like I'm trying to dog out the entire Las Vegas comedy scene, even though I wouldn't care if I was. But I'm just trying to give a fair picture of what it is I see. And so anyway, so here we are on night 3, and I'm tired. I had literally just said I was ready to go home. I see Hormos Rashidi, who works for the Comedy Store, and I've been friends with Hormos since he first got to LA, and that's when I was living in LA, obviously. And so me and Hormos are chatting really quick. But I just said I was going to leave. I said my goodbyes to everybody, was out of there. Troy Conrad, took a couple quick pictures of me, which I got to wait to get those because Troy's extremely busy. He does the photography for everybody, but I've known, like Gabriel Iglesias, Joe Coy, a bunch of people. I've known Troy Conrad forever, though, since Marvin Mary's days, which was, when I first got to LA. And I really love Troy Conrad. So he was like, let's take a couple quick pictures before you go. And so usually I'd be like, no. I said, I'm out. But I went ahead and took the pictures because it's Troy and he's great. And I love him. And then Angie Crum comes in. And of course I'm happy to see Angie. And I'm like, what's up, Angie? Hey, and she, we give each other the hug or whatever. But she's like, oh my God, I have to talk to you. I saw Delilah. And in my head, I'm just like, we're at Skankfest right now. Joe DeRosa is right there. The fucking founder of South by Southwest, I can reach out and touch him right here. Corinne Fisher is right over there. Tony Hinchcliffe is standing right in that corner. Brian Redband, it's like every big person in actual stand-up and podcasting is around us, and you think I care about Delilah right now? Not in the least. Not thinking about Delilah. Haven't thought about Delilah in quite a while. The only time I think about Delilah is when I see a corset, and that's just because, to me, it's funny. But I don't have hard feelings towards Delilah. To me, Delilah and any of the people that don't like me on the Las Vegas comedy scene, I mentioned Lex, and if you guys notice, when I talk about Lex, I mention him in a very, casual, matter-of-fact way. I don't mention him I hate this guy, and I think he's so... But I just don't think he's a good comic, and I don't know what it is he's doing, and I don't really understand what his end game is. But really, at the end of the day, I don't have to. But I don't spend my days thinking about Lex. I'm not constantly, I don't go to Chanclas anymore because Lex is there, and I don't want to go, again, disrespect somebody in their own room. But when I have business in Chanclas, when there's a reason for me to be at Chanclas, I go to Chanclas. I just pretend like Lex isn't there. If I ever decide to perform at Chanclas again, I don't know if you guys remember, but I'm good friends with Megan, the owner of Chanclas, and her husband, Eddie, the other owner of Chanclas, and I'm good friends with Trez, have been for years now. And so if I ever want to perform there again, I can easily perform there. It's not like I need Lex Las Vegas for that, and he knows that too. So for me, it's like these people, I'm not thinking about them, especially when I'm in a situation like Skankfest, where they're some of the biggest comics, literally biggest comics in not only stand-up, but podcasting as well. And for some reason, now I'm being told about Delilah. So I really didn't care for that part of the conversation, but I still was like, okay, still listening just to try to be polite, but I didn't want to hear it. And so I heard about Delilah from Angie in that situation. And I told Angie literally, I was like, just completely ignore her. I don't know why you're even still paying attention to that person. She's a non-issue. And then I was like, all right, well, I got to get out of here. And then Angie was like, I've got to tell you something else. And then I was like, tell me in a couple days. I'm going home now. And then she was like, no, I just want to tell you something real quick. And I was like, I've got to go. And I just went ahead and left. And no disrespect to Angie, but that's what I would do to absolutely anybody that was trying to talk to me after I said I've got to go. Once I say I've got to go, I've got to go. There's nothing else to talk about unless somebody's dying or it's something that's very, very important. I don't care about anything once I say I've got to go. Ask any of the people that talk to me on the phone what it is I'm like when they say I've got to go. I ask zero questions, because that happens all the time with me and my friends. Like, it's happened with Trevor, it's happened with Casper, where they're like, oh, I got to take this call, and I'm like, bye, and I'll just hang up, and I'm not at all mad, and there's nothing for us to talk about later or clear the air about or anything like that. The next time we talk, we just talk like it's a completely different conversation, because I don't hold any feelings towards that. I understand sometimes there are things more important than what our leisurely conversation is covering right now. So I expect the same with people when I say I've got to go. When I say, hey, I got to get off the phone, bye, just hang up. You know, you don't even have to say bye. You could just hang up. Like, I don't care. And so in that way, you can say, or I can say, I 100% do treat people the way that I want to be treated. Like, when it's time for me to go, it's just time for me to go. And Angie sent me a message that it was actually very nice, and I did appreciate the message. And I love you too, Angie, and I really do love you, and I really do mean it. And I'm not trying to call you out publicly here or whatever, but it's just, this is where I do most of my talking. So sometimes when people want to have a heart-to-heart with me, I am not necessarily the biggest on that, because there was a situation on RuPaul's Drag Race, and I'll talk about this, and then I'll talk about what my solution is for all of the Las Vegas drama, and then I'll get out of here. But there's a situation on RuPaul's Drag Race that was kind of a famous situation where one of the drag performers, Pearl, had told RuPaul how she really respected RuPaul and everything she's done for the art of drag. And RuPaul looked at Pearl and said, unless, because it was like between takes, and RuPaul said, unless those cameras are running, nothing you say matters. Which, like, with the exception of a couple of things, I used to, but I don't take the Las Vegas comedy scene seriously at all at this point. And so there's not really a lot to discuss with me personally anymore. Like, for me, this is more about show, and it's not necessarily the way I want to live my life full time anymore, because there's a lot of it that I don't respect. There's a lot of it I don't care for. And having comics that I know and respect ask me over and over, because just before Skankfest was the Laughs After Dark festival, which I saw a bunch of my LA friends come in for that too. And having people ask you over and over what the scene is like here, and me having to somewhat make excuses for this scene in order not to be embarrassed by it. It just made me feel like I understand what my thing is with this city. And I understand that a lot of what's good here is new, and it's going to take long enough to actually turn into something, even under the best circumstances, that I don't necessarily want to wait around for that process to happen, for me to have people to help me get stronger, and for me to have people to play off. And then when it comes to, like, you know, you take the podcast section, and you have David Hewlett, who, in my opinion, is making a huge mistake with what he's trying to do with Paprika right now, and worried more about quantity than quality, and worried more about having some kind of internet drama with somebody that doesn't matter and isn't on the scene, and also he himself not having any real product to push. To me, that seems like a mistake, and it's not something I want to be involved with, and I don't want Unbothered involved with that. You know, I just don't see any benefit to that. So I don't want to be a part of the Las Vegas comedy scene anymore. And so I'll finish out the things I have to do. You know, if TC still wants to have me on the Battle Roast, I'm down to do that. But also, I'm telling TC and everybody else, use me to my maximum potential. I don't mind when people use me in the professional way and are like, okay, I want the absolute best from you, and maybe you can help us stamp this a little bit, and then maybe we can bring other people in, maybe from actual roast battle in LA. And when I say that I have connections with people, I actually do. And the people themselves will tell you that. Like, that's why when I did my comedy festival, it was the first year and it came out so great. And so many great people, not only from stand up, but also industry came out. And it was because of me. A lot of that was because of me. And that's something Steven nor Jaws would argue about. I actually know the people I say I know. And in spite of what everybody tries to say about my reputation with actual professionals and people actually in the industry is actually really good. So when I say, hey, I have access to certain people, or maybe I can hook you up with certain people, and you're like, well, I know those people too. And it's like, why don't we stop playing with each other and just use me to my fucking potential? So that's what I would tell everybody on this scene. If you want to hire me because you want to do fucking comedy coaching, we could possibly work out a deal on that, because I'll do some like 1 month unlimited for like a one price, but I don't know exactly what that price is going to be. It might be sliding scale, but be fucking serious about it, because I'm not trying to waste time and I really don't need anybody for anything right now. So you're catching me at the best and worst time when it comes to all of this. Because if you want to get the best out of me, if you want to get the best out of yourself, if you want to use me to get the best out of yourself, then do that. But everything else to me is bullshit, and I'm not going to waste a lot of time on it. So that's where I'm at, and I hope everybody has a good day. Stay unbothered.